On the banks of Lake Geneva, in the heart of the Alps, Lavaux paints an incomparable vineyard landscape. For millennia, it was only brush, until man mastered this slope, perfectly suited for the cultivation of the vine. This area is a tiny islet, wedged between Lausanne and Vevey. Almost 2,000 acres, shared by more than 1,000 owners. A thin strip that stretches between 1,200 feet in altitude at the level of the lake and 2,000 feet, where the forest takes over from the vineyard. Lavaux is above all 250 miles of walls, 10,000 terraces stacked on 40 different levels, a fascinating landscape that has nothing natural left about it. Landscape created by man for the purposes of the vine. Landscape that is the object of much attention.
We'll go see the walls of Delazy. I'll reconstitute 1 or 2 fleshy wines and then take the opportunity to redo the walls. Maybe put up a scaffolding, or we plan to put up a rope and use a harness. There are some that are secure from the top.
Ah, the big walls.
Yeah, for the big ones. The ivy's grown back, and we have to remove it, down there at the bottom where we made the concrete buttress.
Jean-François Chevalet inspects the walls with his son, who will take over in a few years. It's a savoir-faire passed on from generation to generation, an integral part of the activity of winemakers, calling for constant attention.
There isn't much, but we'll take the opportunity to clean it. See how hollow it sounds?
For some 15 acres of vineyards, Jean-François takes care of 2.5 miles of walls, a considerable task and cost in terms of the size of plots they circumscribe.
On this parcel, there's almost as many wall surfaces as land surfaces. Over there, we'll work this small plot, which is maybe 1,600 to over 2,000 feet. And then the one above, which is over 3,000 square feet. It'll take us about 3 weeks. That's one from 1956-57. That's what my father told me because I wasn't born yet. And that's me in '83. We never made dry stone walls. They didn't exist in Lavaux because the earth is rich and the walls must hold, or they'll soon fall down. And it's clear that they're anchored into the rocks. And in general, when they built in the past, they wed the ground with the rocks and mounted the walls like that. A cathedral of walls was created in this vineyard to cultivate the vines.
But in this cathedral, the work is delicate. Mechanization is almost impossible. The work is undertaken essentially on the backs of men, even if the winemakers sometimes resort to unusual means. During the harvest, Jean-François Chevalet is never as vigilant as when his team works in Désalé, one of the appellations of Lavaux.
Don't pack the last one down too much, Elder, because as we have to wait a long time due to the juice, I don't only want juice. Okay, Elder? Don't overpack the last one.
Okay.
It's in Désalé that Lavaux's reputation takes on its true meaning. 45-degree slopes, walls, stairs everywhere.
Climb 2 steps.
Everything is complicated here, physical.
Come here, in front of Tim.
The slightest effort pays.
Oh my God.
In Désalé, the helicopter has become indispensable for the most remote parcels.
Okay, désolé. And for which client there?
Jean-François.
Okay.
Okay. Is it bins or bags with him?
It's bins.
Okay, ouais.
It's just below there.
Ouais, vers le mur. Ouais, c'est bon, je l'ai.
The bins are slightly to your right.
We see the bins. They're on the walkway. We'll drop them just below. Back up, just in front of me.
Height 0, that's perfect. We'll advance like that. Height 0.
Jean-Francois observes the maneuver. The bins start to accumulate, a strange ballet with the backdrop of Lake Geneva.
The bins weigh about 992 pounds, and these are small. They're filled right up to the top.
This is one of the steepest vineyards in Dézélie. The steepest, really. And if we harvest by helicopter now, it's due to rational and security issues, because before carrying was done only on men's backs. We had double teams. Now, the carriers pick the grapes, and we save a significant amount of time.
These grapes that fly the skies don't only reflect an economic rationale. This image is above all the symbol of the continuous adaptations undertaken by man to make wine from this difficult earth.
The helicopter helps us quite a bit with the harvests. We avoid the back-breaking work of our grandfathers. They had no helicopters. They had to do everything themselves. In any case, they're the ones who created the Lavaux vineyards. It has evolved with man and nature over the centuries. This is not a natural landscape. It was created by man.
This relationship between man and his landscape, this domestication of nature to suit the needs of the vineyards, led Lavaux to be named a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2007. Emmanuel Estope manages the site for this organization. He also reminds us that Lavaux was already a great source of Swiss pride before this ranking. It also inspired the prose of its greatest writer, Charles-Ferdinand Ramuz.
What's very interesting with Charles-Ferdinand Ramuz is that he manages to truly transcribe the landscape, what people live through the landscape. A painter paints a picture, and he is able to transcribe the emotion that one feels in this landscape. A landscape is an activity that depends on the environment, but also on man. And Charles-Ferdinand Ramuz relays extremely well this relationship that man has with the slope, with the houses that he lives in, these narrow streets. Here, we leave the slope right away. Our homes are here, grouped together one on top of another to gain maximum space, and right away we're here. In fact, we live with the slope, the vines, the land. And if we want to show the importance that he has in Switzerland and the region, we can just take a Swiss banknote, which actually features Charles-Ferdinand Ramuz. What's interesting is that on this side of the bill is his portrait, and if we turn it over, we find the terraces of Lavaux.
You never see these terraces as well as in winter, when the vines are bare. This is how Charles-Ferdinand Ramuz described them.
The good Lord started it. We then came and finished it. The good Lord made the slope, but we made it serve. We made it stay. We made it last. So would we recognize it now? And it's no longer natural, it's fabricated. It's us, fabricated by us. It stays, thanks to us. It's no longer a slope. It's a construction, it's a tower, it's the facade of a fortress.
Throughout history, men have known that this abrupt territory was particularly well oriented to plant vines, but they still had to be able to master the land. In the cantonal archives of Lausanne, Gilbert Goutard lords over the stacks. Here rests the history of the city, the cultural, political, economic, and religious center of Europe during the Middle Ages. The Bishop of Lausanne was then a prince of the Holy German Empire, who was accountable only to the emperor. At the end of the 11th century, he received possession of the lands that constitute Lavaux today, and in particular the steepest slopes, those of Désolé.
Clearly, the Romans brought the vines, but in the area we're interested in, their presence is insignificant. It really is an entity from the 12th century, where we can follow step by step the domestication of nature and the development of the vine. It's an important document because it's one of the oldest attestations of the land of Désolé. In 1154, Bishop Amadei of Lausanne grants the Cistercian monastery in Upper Crete land in this region, which is defined in this document very precisely as terram désolé ad mediterrium deserium aquae incultant, therefore half-desert and uncultivated. We're at the beginning of a process. The land of Désolé will host various domains and religious hands, and that will constitute one of the lands of reference for Lavaux. But there is something special when you see the slope of the land. If everything lent itself to the vine and the vicinity of the lake, in any case, putting the vines in this place was in a certain regard an act of faith that the religious accomplished.
The land of Lavaux is a difficult land. Centuries were needed to tame it. These 10,000 terraces are the result of a historical process where workers who were employed by religious orders in the Middle Ages acquired plots of land and passed them on to their children over the generations. The same families that shaped Lavaux can still be found there today.
Leave the very small ones. The line on the other side. Don't cut too much. That's the sunburn on the vine. They're called nudges because they're like a blow. It's a white grape. That one got too much heat. Well, it'll ripen.
It's not too serious, right?
It's a family history. Since I'm of the 22nd generation, and my son will be the 23rd on the domain. It started in 1434. It's from ancient writings that we found that we are actually from the region. At that time, there were quite a few families that had started cultivating vines, and who then remained winemakers.
For Emmanuel Estopé, who likes surveying the vineyards to meet those who work there, these families are just as important as the landscape. They were one of the factors justifying the classification of the vineyard as a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
All right, and you? Have you finished?
Yeah, I finished yesterday.
Okay, everything went well?
You
told me about the family tree you'd done. Is it possible to see it?
Yes, of course.
Because I want to show you something concerning the families.
With pleasure. Here it begins in 1835.
Magnificent. And you're on it?
It ends here with my grandfather, who's here, Fernand Henri. And after, we're missing 3 generations. My grandfather always said, I was a bird. Me, I'm there. That makes 20.
This is the only vineyard to our knowledge to have so many families that have been here for such a long time. Here we see some 20 generations. It's far from unique, though. There are many, many families here. It's something quite extraordinary. There's nothing scientific which allows me to explain why we find this case in Lavaux. I think when you're in the Lavaux vineyards, there's something special that binds us, which makes us stay. Right here.
I think there's an emotional side too, which is important. It's the weight of the tradition that's here. People have stayed. The weight of the centuries.
But is it really a weight? Do you feel it?
Yeah, I do. If it's me who stops, it would be my generation that stopped everything.
These families can perhaps also last due to the marvelous setting that justifies their efforts. Widely studied, the influence of Lake Leman on the local climate is essential. From the late 19th century, it is shown that the reflection of sunlight mirrored by the lake widely favors the grape's maturation. The steep slope accentuates this positive effect, and the walls restore the heat at night. So everyone here likes to say that these are the three suns that fled Lavaux: the sun, the lake, the walls. A blessing to the king varietal of the region, the Chasselas.
Hi, Manu.
Hi, Constant.
How are you?
Fine, and you?
Fantastic. It feels good to see beautiful grapes like that. Beautiful Chasselas from an extraordinary vintage. See those grapes, how golden they are? What a great year. A lot of concentration. Chasselas is not the aromatic grape variety by excellence. It's more about finesse, about subtlety. We're far from the aromas like Muscat, Sauvignon, that are so fragrant that sometimes they're almost nauseating. Here it's really about the subtlety and finesse.
They're superb.
At Lavaux, 80% of the land is devoted to white wine, which by immense majority comes from the Chasselas.
Look at that.
It's the Swiss grape variety par excellence, whose Leman origin was confirmed just a few years ago.
To your health.
To your health, thank you.
Outside of Switzerland, it is hardly ever vinified.
Volontiers, je dirais même.
Each grape has its place of origin, a place where it's historically attached. Chasselas has always been important for the people here throughout Lavaux's history. And then people are used to working it, vinifying it. It's difficult to make wine with this grape. It demands a lot of attention, a lot more attention than other grapes. So when it arrived in France, after we found it in Germany, the Chasselas was mainly appreciated as a table grape because it's actually very, very good to eat. So it remained a table grape on the tables of the King of France. For a certain time, we didn't try to vinify it because we didn't have the know-how to do so. We acquired the expertise. I think that's why we don't find Chasselas winemaking except here, mainly here.
A single variety, an exceptional scenery, ancestral families. It is believed that Lavaux is characterized by its particularities.
So, to your health.
But there's another theme that Jean-François evokes when the three generations of Chevalets, all living under the same roof, toast. It's brotherhood.
The owners have entrusted the Brotherhood to oversee their vineyards. In fact, we must be the only ones doing this kind of work for owners. It dates back centuries. It started approximately in the 16th to 17th century.
In Lavaux, owners not exploiting their vines themselves appoint the Brotherhood to oversee the work of their winemaking workers.
Pascal, you see there, at the end of the line, you come back and then there's a staircase there to switch to fleshy wine from above.
3 times a year, an expert committee, chaired by Jean-François, who examines the parcels, inspects the work. Above all, he grades. These grades are anything but folklore. They're even the big topic of conversation at the heart of a vineyard, where a competitive spirit floats. Because at the end of the grading, every 3 years, there's the ranking of the best winemaker hack. And once in a generation, a grand celebration that honors them, a party anchored in local life, a celebration of its memory and the identity that marks the population. This celebration has even become a timestamp that marks people's lives, against which we remember the marriages, divorces, births, and funerals. In Vevey, Sabine Caruso, historian and Secretary General of the Brotherhood of Winegrowers, guards the archives that recount this unique celebration. Until the 18th century, the Brotherhood pilloried the bad winemakers on the church's square. With the Enlightenment, it seeks to valorize and starts to crown the best of them, having them march in the streets and organizing the first festival in 1797. This is really something that has grown over the centuries. Initially, it was just a procession through the streets of the city. But at a time when there were few events, they already attracted people in Vevey. You have to imagine that during the Reformation, people were entitled to a single dance at weddings and sang psalms in church, but all music was forbidden. And from the moment that there was public transport, the first steamboat, after the train in 1860, it has really taken on an extraordinary dimension. The party is thus held every 20 to 25 years. There were 5 in the 20th century, each illustrating the fashions of the moment. So it was just 10 years after the invention of cinema. Already the procession and the celebration were filmed. Here we're truly in the 50s, really influenced by the epic films. We created a Roman arena. It's really Hollywood on Léman. At the last one, in 1999, 240,000 people attended the performances by 5,000 actors and extras, who came for the vast majority from the region, because during the festival, the locals take the stage. The strongest memory, I think, is the last, when we knew it was over. The next day already, the stands had to be dismantled. It was a really very emotional moment. For many people here, it is truly the adventure of their lives. It's a sort of daily life and something very powerful. With the Chevalets, as in all families, the generations congregate around the memories associated with the wine growers' holiday season.
There, that's my wife and our son.
For the next festival, in 2019, Jean-François will be on both the organizing committee and a bystander. As a winemaker, he's certainly the guarantor of this culture and this unique landscape.
This landscape will live as long as winemakers can live off this land. So it's clear that if it becomes a museum, this vineyard will die a most beautiful death. But for now, it is kept up to the last square inch, Swiss style.